Arizona Congresswoman Debbie Lesko sits on the committee to investigate the origins of COVID. She was on the Hill earlier today asking a series of questions to witnesses who came to testify, and we're happy to have the Congresswoman joining us now. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Congresswoman, as a member of the committee investigating the origins of COVID, you had your first hearing today, some calling it an explosive one at that. Were you satisfied with the testimony you heard, and do you still feel as though there are some unanswered questions?
Well, yes, I was satisfied with the witnesses' testimony. I thought some new information came out, as well as existing information that we already knew, but that was confirmed. But there's still questions, and there will be questions because China covered it up. And so we'll continue to have questions. There are questions revolving Dr. Fauci's involvement with trying to promote just one thesis, that it was original origin of COVID. But we're going to get to the bottom of it.
To your point, Congresswoman, you mentioned Dr. Fauci. Why do you think we did see certain people and agencies within our own government downplaying this lab leak theory?
Well, I asked Dr. Redfield that today. He was one of the witnesses. He was the former CDC director, and for the last 40 years, he has been studying viruses, and he's a biologist. And so I asked him, why did Dr. Fauci believe that it was a natural origin? COVID came from natural origin. And why did he try to silence anybody who thought otherwise? And he said he thought that Dr. Fauci was going by what had happened in the past with SARS and MERS, and that it wouldn't have spread to humans. But Dr. Redfield told him right from the beginning, this is different. I'm a virologist. This is different. This is going from humans to humans at a very fast pace, and SARS and MERS did not do that. In fact, to this date, it's very hard to replicate a coronavirus 19 virus in bats. So another testimony that came out of this was that another doctor testified that the Chinese government has tested over 100,000 animals in China, and not one single animal has the coronavirus virus in them, which is very unusual. So a lot of very strange things are happening. Dr. Redfield, again, the former CDC director, believes that the virus COVID-19 came from the Wuhan lab. He also believes that gain-of-function research was happening at the Wuhan lab. He also believes that the U.S. government was funding part of that research.
Congresswoman, do you think this raises deeper concerns and questions potentially about the level of influence that the CCP has in American society?
I definitely do believe that the Chinese government tried to cover this up. I am very concerned that U.S. tax dollars were used for what I believe is gain-of-function research. Now, in a previous hearing, I asked the acting NIH director, National Institute of Health director, which gave out the grant to EcoHealth Alliance, which gave out a sub-grant to the Wuhan lab to do virus studies. I asked him if U.S. tax dollars were being used to study coronavirus. He denied it. He said, no, absolutely not. It was totally different. And then I followed up with him and I said, how would you know that? Because the Chinese deleted the virus sequences in September of 2019. You didn't get the reports on the grants that you were supposed to get. How would you know that they weren't doing coronavirus research? There's no way that he could tell that they weren't doing gain-of-function research on coronavirus at the Wuhan lab. And so there's a lot of inconsistencies here, people saying different things. And that's why this committee, it's so important that we are getting the emails that we're going to and from Dr. Fauci. And we're going to keep investigating this because it's important. I mean, 7 million people in the world died. That's at a minimum. One of the witnesses today, who's a Democrat, by the way, said they believe it was 20 million people in the world died from COVID-19. And in addition, it's important when we determine our policies if we want to continue to fund gain-of-function research. Dr. Redfield thinks we should have a moratorium on it. We should have a discussion about, do we really want to fund this risky research on viruses that may leak from the lab? And he believes that that risky research, gain-of-function research, was done at the Wuhan lab. It was partially funded by the United States, and it was accidentally leaked.
Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.